I remember buying this book when it first came out in 2011. I got really mad at the first case because the solution is glass wind chimes emit a sound wave frequency of over 3400 hertz. Therefore, you cannot hear a wind chime on a phone call. It's just like the Encyclopedia Brown mysteries that rely on obscure facts that readers cannot reasonably be expected to know.
Argofont Book Review, Argofont Book Review.
The first third of the book is a case called Turnabout with the Wind. Phoenix and Maya wear traditional robes when attending a wind chime festival. They learn Larry Butts has a new girlfriend. The book jumps ahead to Larry being on trial for the murder of Belle's ex-boyfriend. Winston Payne is the prosecutor, and I can't tell if the story is rushed or if Payne is just terrible at solving murder mysteries. For example, a security photo shows the victim was fatally stabbed long before reaching the place where he died. Payne doesn't know or care where the stabbing happened. That's a pretty big detail to overlook, Payne. Larry's alibi is that he and Belle were on a video call for an hour. There is some footage and pictures of the call, almost like Larry and Belle knew they would be part of a murder trial. Payne brings in a scary-looking woman who runs an inn. A mystery client paid a lot of money to secure a room and decorate it on the night of the murder. The next day, the room was empty, except for the murder weapon. Payne concludes the culprit disguised the room as their own home to create a fake, I'm on a video call from home alibi. Phoenix realizes Belle's is the culprit because there's a wind chime card visible in one of the photos. That means she had the window open. If she had been at her real house at the time, the window would have been closed due to a severe rainstorm. Therefore, she was in this fake room in a totally different part of Los Angeles. Belle denies the accusations, but she accidentally slips up by saying where she stabbed the victim. She tries to cover by saying, I know where he was stabbed because I heard wind chimes from the Wind Chime Festival. Phoenix rejects this argument because, as everyone knows, you can't hear wind chimes on cell phones. Belle confesses she's the killer. She only dated Larry because she needed an idiot to be the fall guy for her schemes. The story ends with Phoenix and Maya reflecting on the nature of love. It's supposed to be serious and tragic, but I'm getting some romantic vibes from them here. The rest of the book is the first half of the Turnabout Gallows mystery. Hopefully my recap will not miss any minor details, which become crucial in the next book. Phoenix and Maya are hired by Robin Wolf, a rich CEO. He recently had a stern meeting with a nasty employee named Eddie Johnson. On the way home, Eddie flew into a screaming panic, saying, a giant spider is about to eat me! He fell off a wall and died in front of a large crowd. Wolf has a gorgeous wife and daughter who look like they're from a teenage boy's fantasy. The wife, Therida, is distant and doesn't want to talk to anyone. Lyra is an angry teenager. She was dating the victim, and she yells at her dad all the time. Why do you keep killing my boyfriends, Dad? You're so mean. I'm gonna run away and get drunk now. The victim's brother, Brock, shows up with a giant case of beer. Both Brock and Lyra argue with Wolf. Wolf has a guest house which is creepy and filled with hundreds of spiders. They belong to his brother Bobby. On the night of the murder, Wolf sent Bobby away on an unimportant errand in San Francisco. Brock says this was an excuse, so Wolf could take the victim into the spider house and scare him to death. There's a section break here. I thought, okay, after that long introduction, we're going to start the trial. Haha, no. We're not even close to finishing the introduction. It's sort of like Case 5 of Great Ace Attorney 1, where you have to wait 2.5 hours before the murder occurs. Phoenix, Maya, and Brock enter the spider den. They meet the shy Bobby and his friend, Professor Thomas Spitzer. They both have spider hair. Phoenix's narration says this will become the case of the terrifying Spider-Man. Spider-Man does whatever a Spider-Man does. There is a one-person elevator that goes up to the ceiling. A spider named Charlotte escapes. They capture the spider near some gas cans. The spider lays a bunch of eggs in Phoenix's pocket. That's gross. Also, I assume this is a joke reference to Charlotte's Web. The room has a reclining chair with heavy restraints. It's designed to hold Bobby down whenever he has a fit. You can remove the restraints with a remote, or by touching the switch at the bottom, or by turning off the power to the building. Wolf disappears. He wakes up trapped in the restraints in the spider den. He sees a Spider-Man crawling on the ceiling. Spider-Man says he's coated the building with gas, and he just started a 30-minute time bomb. If Wolf doesn't escape in time, he'll die. Wolf draws a picture of the Spider-Man, which I am sure will be important evidence in the trial. Around 11 o'clock, Lyra returns from her drinking party. Brock returns from drinking with Bobby. Lyra complains her dad and uncle have a low alcohol tolerance. Why is there so much beer talk in this case? And it's kind of rude that Phoenix and Maya were forced to sit in a room by themselves while everybody else went out. Just in time, they learn Wolf is trapped in the spider den. He begs them to turn off the power. Lyra does so, but the top of the building explodes anyway. I'm not sure if she was too late or if the culprit lied about how to turn off the bomb. The spider den building burns down. Wolf is found dead, not from the explosion or the fire, but from a severe head injury. We end with the dramatic revelation that the security alarms didn't go off, meaning nobody left the property. That means one of the characters must be the killer. I understand the point that Detective Gumshoe is making, but at the same time, didn't half the characters leave the property to go out drinking? The end. Postbook follow-up. I think the first case needed to be longer. It felt a bit like the author wrote a 100-page story, but was later forced to cut it down to 70 pages. I'm guessing they wanted the first case to feel like a simpler tutorial case, the kind you get at the start of a Phoenix Wright game. It was a bit too complicated and rushed to be considered a simpler case. Or maybe I'm just grumpy that 2 of the big clues involved wind chime knowledge. I never think about wind chimes ever. The second case has the opposite problem. There is way too much setup and introduction, over 100 pages of it, before the murder happens. Surely some of the scenes could have been cut? I won't spoil who is and who is not a red herring character who barely appears in the next book, but I think that red herring character should have been eliminated entirely. The story noticeably picks up once Wolf is kidnapped. Maybe that should have happened sooner. Then again, everybody leaves for a significant period of time at that point because, well, it's a murder mystery. It works better when none of the suspects have alibis. Overall, I'd say the book has bad pacing. I think the 3 parts were originally sold separately, in which case the pacing would not be as bad. And I totally understand why they stretched out Case 2. They wanted the book to end on a cliffhanger so people would buy the next book of the series. I would be lying if I said the games did not have big cliffhangers in the exact same way. I give Phoenix Wright Volume 1 a 4 out of 10. The first half of this book concludes the Turnabout Gallows story for the last book. I thought they would start at the courtroom, but we get 15 pages of investigation first. It kind of feels like the author went, "Uh-oh, I forgot some clues. Gotta sneak them in real quick before the trial starts."
Argofont Book Review, Argofont Book Review.
Phoenix returns to the crime scene. He and Edgeworth discover the picture that the victim drew. Edgeworth dismisses it as totally irrelevant information, which is a rookie mistake on his part. Phoenix notes the table legs and chair legs are badly burned, but the floor wasn't burned at all. How is that possible? Now the trial begins. When the first 2 witnesses testify, Phoenix leans heavily on the fact that Bobby was obsessed with his spider collection. He wouldn't destroy his spiders in a fire. Edgeworth has an explanation. Bobby didn't start the fire on purpose. He started it by accident because he occasionally used gas cans as a footstool. That is a very unsafe thing to do. I mean, I love books, and even I would use one of the hundreds of giant books in the room as a footstool before using gasoline. Phoenix disproves Edgeworth's theory by pointing out that gas cans were on a high shelf. Bobby would have needed a footstool in order to reach them, Nobody's going to get a footstool in order to reach a second footstool. It's like when they wrap a pair of scissors in hard plastic, so you need scissors to get your scissors. Edgeworth asks for a brief recess so he can provide an end-of-chapter cliffhanger. He has a tense confrontation with a shadowy witness in the hallway. Trial resumes. The surprise witness is Brock. Edgeworth cleverly bluffed him into confessing, which is a good trick. Phoenix should try that sometime. Brock tries to avoid murder charges by confessing to the lesser crime of arson. He says he planted the time bomb in the building. It's just a coincidence that it went off at the same time the victim was killed by a blow to the head. Yeah, right. Nobody's gonna believe that. Brock says the Spider-Man thing was Bobby's drunken prank. That's something no one comments on. Bobby is accused of committing murder while drunk. The defendant wasn't in his right mind at the time, as confirmed by Detective Gumshoe. I feel like that should have some effect on the trial and Phoenix's defense. Phoenix gets sad. He's about to give up when Maya asks what her sister would do. Phoenix remembers Mia's words of wisdom, and I would not be surprised to learn this moment was all an excuse to include attractive pictures of Mia. They put her on the back cover, even though she's only in the book for a page. Phoenix solves the case when he looks at the picture that the victim drew. The picture is upside down. Phoenix realizes he's holding the paper upside down. Oops, silly Phoenix. No big revelation here. I'm joking. Phoenix realizes the picture is not upside down. Rather, the victim drew it while hanging upside down from the ceiling. That explains why the table and chair legs were burned when the floor wasn't. They were bolted to the ceiling at the time. Now, I find it a little hard to believe the victim managed to pull out a pencil and do a detailed sketch without realizing he was upside down, especially with his arms and restraints. He would have dropped the paper or the pencil for sure. Brock is the culprit. He's the only one strong enough to bolt things to the ceiling. He's also the only one with the electrical expertise to make sure the restraining chair was fully powered despite being on the ceiling. It is strongly implied that Edgeworth knew Brock was guilty all along. Edgeworth purposely manipulated Phoenix and the course of the trial to reach this outcome. He's a clever one, Mr. Edgeworth. The rest of the book is a case called Turnabout Showtime. Phoenix and Maya are at a theme park with security guard Wendy Oldbag and giant cartoon character costumes. It's a lot like Case 3 of the first Edgeworth game. There's a stage show with the characters. They're played by Flip Chambers, the victim who can do forward flips, Buck Montana, the gambler, Raymond Spoom, the perfectionist. Julie Henson is also in the show. She's the only one who doesn't wear a costume. Phoenix has a huge crush on her, since she looks a little like his ex-girlfriend. Maya doesn't seem to know about Dahlia, so does this story take place in between Game 2 and 3? Spoom warns Julie not to bite her nails. Flip does an impressive backflip during the show. At the very end, he stumbles on stage and dies from a knife wound to the stomach. Several times the book calls this a locked room murder, even though it's not a room. Flip's body was inside a costume the whole time. The culprit couldn't have stabbed Flip from the outside, because there are no holes in the costume. The culprit couldn't have gotten into the costume, because the hidden zipper was covered with glue. Also, the zipper's in the back, while Flip was stabbed in the front. Julie is accused of the murder, since she's the only one who could move her hands at the time of the killing. Everybody else was trapped in a costume. They couldn't have stabbed anyone. In a nearby storeroom, Phoenix finds a sharp wire wrapped around a pipe. He realizes this is a secret trick. Someone wearing a costume can hook their zipper to the wire. That way they can unzip themselves and get out of the costume without outside help. Great deduction, but Oldbag's security camera shows that nobody entered the storeroom to use the wire. Me? I'm wondering why only one of the 4 rooms had a security camera. It would have helped a lot if the security camera had been watching the crime scene and not the random storeroom several rooms over. Spoom testifies. He says the defendant hid a retractable knife inside the costume ahead of time. It was held in place with duct tape. I wonder why Phoenix didn't find the duct tape when he searched the inside of the costume. I'm also wondering how the knife was removed from the costume, and nobody bothers to explain that part of the scenario. Edgeworth is extra shouty when asking for a verdict. Phoenix turns the case around. Literally. He realizes the victim was wearing his costume backwards. That's how he did a backflip instead of his usual front flip. This also explains how the victim was stabbed in the stomach. If you're stabbed from behind, while standing backwards, you're hit in the front. The culprit must have undone the zipper, stabbed the victim, then pulled up the zipper and glued it shut to cover up what happened. There is a small air hole in the back of the costume heads. The air hole is first mentioned so close to the end of the case, it feels a little like cheating. The air hole is the only way you can see in the costume, which is impossible in real life. We are talking about a long show with precise choreography, like backflips. No way are all the performers blind the whole time. In real life, they would probably have video monitors inside the costumes, but I guess they don't because that would ruin the whole stabbed in the stomach story. Spoom knows the defendant bit her nails during the show. He couldn't have seen that unless he was wearing the costume backwards as well. He did this so he could easily undo the zipper from the inside, leave the costume, commit murder, then get back inside. Spoom gives a full confession. Phoenix and Edgeworth are forced to be the temporary replacements in the stage show. They fight the whole time. The end. Post-book follow-up. I just realized that the defendants don't testify in this book series. I wonder if that's better or worse than the games, where defendants like Larry Butts give terrible testimonies that make them look guilty. It certainly does seem that a decent chunk of the courtroom revelations could be skipped if Phoenix talked to the defendant, either on the witness stand or before the trial. Like Phoenix should ask, "Hey Bobby, somebody framed you while you were drunk. Who got you drunk?" Bobby would say it was Brock, and that would skip half the trial. There is a joke comic at the end with the three main prosecutors. It's the only appearance of Godot in this series. I wonder if the second case was intended to be split into 2 chapters like the first one was. There is a point halfway through where Phoenix stops and starts recapping what happened so far, like he's bringing new readers up to date on the story. Overall, I like the book, even though the first case's solution is implausible, and they probably could have reduced the story down from 4 chapters to 3. On the other hand, the games would probably expand the story length by having every suspect testify with contradictions. Too bad Oldbag didn't testify in this book. That would have been hilarious. I give Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney Volume 2 an 8 out of 10.
This review was commissioned by Patreon, and I'll be honest, I had some trouble finding the book because of the title. When you search for Phoenix Wright 3, this is not what comes up. The case in the book is called Turnabout Prophecy. Maybe they should have used that as a subtitle.
Argo Font Book Review. Argo Font Book Review.
Phoenix and Maya are at Fortune Circle, a building with 5 different fortune tellers. Phoenix gets stuck with the joke fortune tellers, like the palm reader who's terrified of touching people's hands, and the guy who predicts the future with ice cream. I see your future will be delicious. Maya goes to the Venusian, a woman who is dressed like a witch. The Venusian makes Maya remove all her electronics, then she forces Maya to grab her hand. She tells Maya to hold the hand and not let go. Then she puts a blindfold and headphones on Maya, so Maya can't see or hear anything. I'm honestly surprised she's not at all suspicious of this, considering how many times she's been framed for murder. Phoenix makes friends with a schoolgirl named Russie Clover. The Venusian has predicted Russie will be possessed by the Lord of Death, right before Russie visits Oracle Hecate. Wouldn't you know it? Hecate's fortune-telling also involves the client not being able to see or hear anything. This feels like a cover-up. I would be suspicious of this place even if this weren't a murder mystery. Specifically, Hecate forces Russie to put her arm through a hole in the wall, which she calls the portal to hell. Russie closes her eyes and chants the whole time. The next thing you know, Hecate is murdered and Rusty is arrested. The Venusian blames the portal to hell and smashes a giant hole in the wall at this point, because she is apparently unaware that destroying a crime scene is illegal. Franziska von Karma helps investigate the crime scene. And by helps, I mean she mostly insults Phoenix and Maya while they investigate. Privately, Ice Cream Man tells Phoenix that he was watching the backside of the wall. He did not see Rusty's arm go through the hole in the wall. Phoenix also learns that the rooms are all connected through a vent system. He purposely decides not to use this information in court, partially because he's an idiot, and mostly because it makes the trial more dramatic. But seriously, Phoenix purposely holds off on revealing this information so it can be the big cliffhanger at the end of Part 2. Rusty's trial begins. Phoenix says his client is innocent because she didn't leave fingerprints on the murder weapon. Franziska totally ignores this valid argument and says Rusty must be the culprit because the room was locked. Phoenix argues Rusty is innocent because she didn't get any blood on her, besides her hand. Franziska argues the culprit wore a raincoat to avoid blood splatter. Phoenix says this contradicts Franziska's earlier claim that the crime wasn't premeditated, and again, she totally ignores this valid argument with a, whatever, your point doesn't matter, Rusty has to be the culprit because the room was locked. Phoenix finally reveals the culprit could have entered through the vent system, and he feels good about himself, until it's quickly pointed out that the vent system was closed that day. Oops. When Maya mentions she had red ink on her hands at the time of the murder, Phoenix solves the mystery. Maya thought she was holding the Venusian's hand, but she was actually holding Rusty's hand. That's why Rusty's hand didn't go through the wall, and how Rusty got red liquid on her one hand. It's kind of amazing nobody noticed her hand was covered in ink, not blood. The Venusian normally does this hand trick as a distraction, so she can go through her clients' phones. She looks up all their personal info, then she pretends to be psychic when she tells their personal info back to them. I'm surprised this plan works. Don't any of these people lock their phones with a password? To be fair, the book says she also goes through people's wallets, but you don't really need to see someone's driver's license to know their height, general age, and home state. That's not the weird thing, though. The weird thing is that whenever the Venusian does the hand trick, she strips out of her witch costume and walks around in a swimsuit. We even get a few pictures of her in a swimsuit committing murder. Could we maybe not interrupt the big revelation with beach babes? The Venusian and the victim were secretly working together. She killed the victim because the victim got greedy and tried to cut her out. She confesses to the murder, and everyone goes to have ice cream with Miles Edgeworth. The end. Post-book follow-up. This book is split up into 3 parts, and I imagine all the parts are sold separately because parts 2 and 3 both start with recap sections. I'm glad they were all joined together for this book, because they're supposed to be read together. If this book only contained the first 2 parts of the story, I would be giving it a much harsher review. I mention this because I'm told this is the only book of the manga series that doesn't split up the story among multiple books. I don't like the sound of that. The artwork is good, although I was a little turned off by the start of the book, where there are many panels of characters screaming. Yes, it makes sense for a visual novel to have visual gags, but it was a bit much. I like the design for the defendant and the ice cream man, but the culprit's design seems to be an excuse for swimsuit shots. I was surprised at how attractive Franziska von Karma was. She constantly makes cute faces, which is weird to say because she's constantly yelling at Phoenix. Overall, I'd say the book is good for what it is, a condensed Phoenix Wright case in picture form. The trial takes up half the book, but I feel like if this was a game, the trial would have been much, much longer. It certainly does feel like a trial you'd see in one of the games, though, definitely a case 3 in the original trilogy. Everything was thought out ahead of time, and all the little clues are there, including a few clues which flew under the radar as jokes. I give Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Volume 3 a 6 out of 10.
This book has an educational section at the end, which explains Japanese honorifics. That's great, but the characters don't use honorifics in this book. I wonder why it was included. I also wonder why it wasn't included for any of the other books in the series.
Argofont Book Review, Argofont Book Review.
The first 2/3 of the book are a case called Turnabout from Heaven. Maya is throwing a beetroot party, only Pearl thinks it's an engagement party. That pun makes more sense in Japanese. Pearl found a cute cat. When looking for the owner, our heroes stumble across a crime scene. A buckwheat noodle magnate named Buck Wheatley was murdered. And yes, this case reminds me of the buckwheat case from Game 6. The victim's daughter is Diana Wheatley. She thinks the killer is her mother, who was in the house that night. The problem is that her mother died 16 years ago, shortly after a kidnapping incident. Diana recaps the two-scene kidnapping incident at length 3 different times in the story. Edgeworth is the prosecutor. He reveals someone put buckwheat flour in the victim's medicine. He had a severe allergic reaction and died instantly. 2 other people knew about the allergy. Dr. Dreama must be innocent because she gave the victim 8 packets. He had 1 medicine packet at lunch and didn't die, therefore they weren't all poisoned. Well, I disagree. She could have poisoned just 1 of the medicine packets, not all 8. The police are still checking the other packets. Typical Phoenix Wright. We're not done checking the evidence, but we'll use it in a murder trial anyway. The other suspect is cleared because the victim kept the medicine in a fingerprint lock safe. In a real Phoenix Wright game, I think a lot more would have been done with this character. Dr. Dreama confesses she occasionally fills medicine packets with flour as a prank. She worries she gave the victim the wrong packet by accident. She tries to brush aside the argument that the victim took medicine with lunch, but Phoenix finds a contradiction in this testimony. Edgeworth demands a verdict, but Phoenix demands to hear more testimony about the defendant's dead mother. Edgeworth laughs and says, "Sure, why not? It can't possibly have any bearing on this case." Dumb move on Edgeworth's part. As usual, Phoenix has an amazing turnabout. He realizes Diana mixed up the 2 parts of her kidnapping story. In reality, the 2 incidents happened in the opposite order. Meaning she wasn't saved from a kidnapping by her mother, she was saved from her kidnapping mother. See, the mother who died was actually her stepmother, only nobody knew it. Dr. Dreama is forced to admit she is secretly Diana's biological mother. She removes her fake wig and glasses, and unless I'm mistaken, she grows much taller. Dr. Dreama confesses she did try to kill the victim, but no, Phoenix can't convict a loving mother character. That would be cruel. So we get the final plot twist that she accidentally switched powdered cat milk with buckwheat flour. This feels like a last-minute cop-out to exonerate her. In reality, she would be convicted of attempted murder. Just because she messed up her murder attempt, that doesn't make her innocent. The real killer is the victim's cat. Cats normally get powdered milk inside their owners' mouths, right? Only in this case, the white powder was poisonous. At least the victim died doing what he loved, hugging his cat. The second case is turnabout gurgitation. And yes, I had to look up that word. It means violent boiling liquid. I think it's a nice way of saying vomit without using the word vomit. Pearl and Maya are watching a TV show where people compete to see who can eat disgusting food the fastest. Today they're eating Mr. Eldoon's spicy noodles. Milo Fairplay wins. In the middle of his victory speech, he falls over and dies from poisoning. Producer Carl Caesar hires Phoenix to investigate. He learns 2 red herring suspects were eliminated in the first round of the show. The contestants in the second round were the victim, Muscles the strongman, and Eco the ecologist. Maya asks why they ate noodles instead of the pork soup that the show advertised. Carl refuses to answer. I haven't seen a Carl dodge a question like that since the time Maya asked what's the difference between the burgers at Hardee's and Carl's Jr. There's a memorial service where we learn the victim always gave himself the largest portion of food during competitions. Muscles and Eco both indicate they have a big secret, which will surely be revealed during the trial. The show's goofy announcer, Kevin Hattori, is arrested when the police find poison in his locker. Plus, he's the one who handed out the food bowls to the 3 contestants. Only he could have ensured the poison would reach the correct target. Not to mention his headband has hot-blooded written on it. Clearly, he's a violent maniac. Objection, Your Honor! That headband just shows he's a fan of the band Foreigner. The prosecutor in the trial is some guy named Winston Payne. I have no idea who he is. He must be an obscure manga-only character. He presents a threatening note found at the crime scene, which indicates the murder was planned. Iko testifies. She claims the threatening note was sent to her. She was the killer's true target. The only reason she didn't die is because the victim switched bowls with her right before the competition started. Phoenix knows there must be another secret the producers are covering up. The end. Post-book follow-up. I like these stories. They're like cases you'd have in the Phoenix Wright games, although far more straightforward. That said, they're definitely more like Case 3 filler case than Case 5 grand finale case. The first case has a stronger, more emotional story. Like I said, the ending is a bit of a cop-out, and it is odd the characters keep insisting dead women can't come back to life, when Maya and Pearl bring dead women back to life all the time. The second case has more comedy, making it less serious. Let's get real, you know a case is not going to be a finale case if the prosecutor is Mr. Payne. On a positive note, it has far more characters than the first case. You can kind of solve the case now, but not really. The vital clues are... well, I'll get to that in the next volume. I give Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Volume 4 an 8 out of 10. Putting Edgeworth on the cover is definitely a stretch. He talks once in a joke ending. He's definitely not a major character here.
Argofont Book Review, Argofont Book Review.
We start with the second half of the Turnabout Gurgitation case. Phoenix knows Carl's hiding something because he has a psyche lock. I'm surprised Phoenix didn't try to break it during the investigation portion of this case. That's what he does in the games. Maya demands to know why the show did not serve pork soup as advertised. That should have been the final round. Under pressure, Carl admits there was a secret third round of the competition which was not shown on TV. I think this plot twist would not work in real life. People would notice if 10 minutes were missing from a TV show. In the missing round, the 3 contestants ate apricots. Milo cheated by hiding the food instead of eating it. The show was forced to hide this round because the advertisers have demanded that Milo win the competition. I'm not sure why Milo bothers to cheat when it's already decided he's gonna win. Phoenix reviews the evidence and finds a vital clue. The fingerprints on the threatening note are off. The victim left a fingerprint near the rip, indicating it was ripped when the victim read it. Here's a picture of the threatening note from the previous book. Notice something different? Yes, they changed the orientation of the note between books, so this fingerprint plot point makes sense. The fingerprints prove Iko lied about when the note was torn. The truth is that she wrote the threatening note to herself to make herself seem innocent. The other vital clue is something I think wasn't in the last book. I'm not sure because it's super hard to notice even when you're looking for it. One of the 3 bowls of noodles has a slightly higher level of broth. It's got more liquid because somebody poured the poison into that bowl. Iko is the culprit. She poisoned her own bowl, knowing the victim always took the bowl with the largest portion. She was right, as the victim switched bowls with her. That's how the culprit ensured the correct person was poisoned. Phoenix finds another contradiction, which I felt was kind of unnecessary. He's already caught the culprit. He correctly deduces Iko would have recycled the bottle of poison instead of throwing it away carelessly. The last case of the series is Turnabout Power versus Supernatural Power. Rusty Clover from Book 3 has joined a religious group called the Great Tengu Society. Phoenix brings Maya with him because it takes 2 to Tengu. A detective named Casper Sly has come to expose the group as a fake. The 5-story building has an elevator with a large statue of Tengu. Even though Sly has a broken leg, he's not allowed to use the elevator. Only Princess Tengu is allowed inside. Sly talks with Princess on the top floor. The two of them ride the elevator down to the 3rd floor. Everyone is shocked. The princess let a non-believer ride the elevator. A strong man named Power Tengu tries to remove Sly, but Princess stops him. She exits the elevator. When the elevator reaches the 1st floor, Sly has disappeared. The entire building is searched, but there is no sign of him anywhere. Princess calls the elevator up to the 5th floor, and this is where I failed the mystery. See, this is just like Case 1 of Encyclopedia Brown Carries On. I reviewed that book. You can watch that review after watching this one. The elevator panel has an up button, even though they're on the top floor. Elevators don't work like that in real life. There is no up button when the elevator can't go up. This button implies the existence of a secret 6th floor to the building. I figured that was the mystery solution. I kept waiting for that big plot twist to appear. It doesn't. There is no 6th floor. The illustrator just goofed on this picture. The 2 elevator buttons are different colors. Maybe that was supposed to imply the top button doesn't work. Anyway, the princess summons the elevator to the 5th floor. Sly's dead body magically appears inside. Franziska von Karma is the prosecutor. She accuses Russie of being the killer. Phoenix disproves the possibility that the victim's body was hidden in a hollow space beneath the statue. Franziska claims the body was hidden above the elevator. The elevator has a hatch on the ceiling. Somebody could have used a stepladder to carry the body up through the hatch. Russie testifies about the night before. She snuck into the elevator and hid under the statue for a while. When she came out, she saw Tengu flying up into the air. I am simplifying this explanation. Like several other Phoenix Wright defendants, Russie lies about what happened. She doesn't want people to know she used the forbidden elevator. Phoenix knows Tengu isn't real. What Russie saw was a life-size doll being suspended in the elevator shaft with fishing line. It stayed in place the whole time. As the elevator went down, it looked like Tengu flew up through the hatch. Phoenix realizes this was a practice run for the murder. Princess did the same trick with Sly's body. It was suspended in the perfect spot, so when the elevator was on the 3rd floor, it looked like the victim was still alive, standing in place. This gave Princess a chance to create a fake alibi. It explains how the body disappeared when the elevator went down, and how it reappeared when the elevator went back up. Phoenix double proves his theory, because the victim didn't have his crutch. How could he stand without a crutch? Nor did the elevator's wait alarm go off when Power Tengu stepped close. Clearly, Sly was suspended from the air instead of touching the bottom of the elevator. I suspect if this was a game, Phoenix would have to triple prove his theory by explaining in detail how the victim's hat got on top of the statue. There's no need in this case, as Princess confesses to everything. The end. Post-book follow-up. I didn't like this book as much as the previous one. As I pointed out, they changed the fingerprint note for this book. The other vital clue was the broth level. As I said, I don't think that was in the previous book. It's definitely cheating when the vital clues change in between the 2 installments of a murder mystery. It's enough to upset me. Even though it's not so bad it ruins the case, I'm sure lots of readers didn't notice those minor continuity issues. The second case was fine. I think it had too many details to keep track of, and I suspect it would have made more sense if I knew anything about Tengu. Why doesn't this volume have a translation note section at the end like the other volumes do? That would have been the ideal place to explain about Tengu. On the other hand, I'm sure some readers felt the case didn't have enough details to keep track of. The characters avoid 2 of the 5 floors. In a game, Phoenix would probably visit all the floors. Franziska von Karma is just as cute as she was in the 3rd volume. I remember her being incredibly scary in the game, so it's weird to see her as the cute one. Now I'm worried the anime also makes her into a sweetheart. Also, the last book of the Edgeworth manga had a case that heavily featured an elevator in Japanese mythology. I'm not sure if that's a coincidence. The stories have the same author, and I gotta say, Edgeworth's mystery was better. Overall, it's still good if you want something that's like the games, only shorter. I wouldn't mind it if they turned this series into an actual game, or some episodes of the anime. I give Phoenix Wright Volume 5 a 6 out of 10.